Notre Dame and Texas A&M are back at it this weekend for another huge showdown. The Irish stunned the Aggies in their own stadium last year, but who has the edge going into Saturday? That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports and have been covering the Irish since 2020. Today is Monday, September 8th, and thank you for getting your game week started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And if you have not already, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube or follow along on your preferred podcast platform. It helps keep this show free and helps you stay up to date with our daily coverage of Notre Dame football. We have got a big one on tap this weekend as number 8 Notre Dame takes on number 16 Texas A&M. And today I'll be joined by Karels from Gig'em 24/7 to get us ready for the matchup. Carter actually covered Notre Dame from 2018 through 2021, and for the past 3 years he has been on the beat for his alma mater, Texas A&M, and I think that makes him the perfect guest to come on and help us learn more about the other side in this game. We're going to cover whether Mike Elko's Aggies are living up to the hype in year 2, how Marcel Reed has grown as their starting quarterback, and just how much the Aggie defense has changed after losing 3 stars to the NFL. And of course, we'll dive into whether last year's fourth quarter rally by Notre Dame is still fresh in College Station. Enjoy. He is the busiest man in sports media this week. It's Karels from Gig'em 24/7. He joins us now. And Carter, before we dive into the specifics, I'd love to know, what were your expectations for Texas A&M in year 2 under Mike Elko?
Yeah, I predicted 8-5 going into the year. I thought that it would look better than last year, which, ended in 8-5. I think that I felt the offense was going to look much improved, and they have so far with just the experience they brought back up front in the running back room, bringing Marcel Reed back, and then just the weapons they added at wide receiver with Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion. But I had some concerns with the defense. Felt like they lost some good talent up front. Felt like they didn't add enough pieces to really answer some of the questions and some of the issues that they had in the second half of last season. And I think so far, they didn't play very well against UTSA. They played better against Utah State. But, yeah, still a lot of questions with that group, I think, as the competition improves.
You kind of already alluded to it. The Aggies took care of business the first 2 weeks of the season. They beat UTSA 42-24 in the opener, although UTSA had a late touchdown late. They followed that up with a 44-22 win over Utah State. Obviously, that's not the most stiff competition in the world, but what do you feel like you've learned about this team through 2 games?
Well, I just think that this offense is a big strength of this team, which is not what you would say last year. Last year, of course, you could say, hey, this before Le'Veon Moss went down, one of the better rushing offenses in the country. I think they were 9th in rushing offense before he went down. But the passing attack and the receivers just were not very good at all. Then they went in the portal. They got Casey Concepcion, a proven guy out of NC State. They got Mario Craver, another pretty proven guy out of Mississippi State. Brought a couple guys back that were a year older and true sophomores like Terry Bussey and Ashton Bethel-Roman. And it's just so much more of an explosive offense now. Last year just really struggled to create separation at wideout. The spacing, the timing, all of that was off. You felt like Marcel Reed really had to make all the plays. Well, now it's the opposite. He doesn't really have to make all the plays. He's just got to get it to the guys and make the right decisions, and then they're the ones creating the plays in space and getting yards after the catch. And we've seen that. Mario Craver, 100-plus yards in back-to-back games. Casey Concepcion, up to about 150 yards and 4 touchdowns. So both of those guys have been as advertised. And then I think defensively, just hasn't been quite as sharp as you would have liked. They gave up 200-plus rushing yards to UTSA. They performed better against Utah State, but still some things here and there that you don't love. Felt like their secondary struggled at times Saturday. Gave up a few plays downfield, gave up a few long runs, but for the most part, they played better Saturday than they did against UTSA.
I want to stay on the offense for a bit now, and I feel like the first question I've got to ask is about quarterback Marcel Reed, because he did get a little bit banged up. Do you expect him to be fully healthy come Saturday?
Yeah, the expectation is that he's good to go. We talked to Mike Elko after the game, and he said that, hey, he could have returned. They said that during the broadcast, too, that he could have returned to the game, but they just held him out, precautionary reasons. We'll see. We'll talk to him again tomorrow. We'll see if anything has changed, but we didn't see him on the field after the game, so it looked like he just kind of remained in the locker room. So that's not the best sign, but we'll talk to Mike Elko again tomorrow and see if there's any further updates there.
Did they elaborate on what the issue was exactly?
They did not. We actually asked Elko that, and he said, nope, not telling you guys, but yeah. It was weird. It was one of those plays where he dives forward, he lands pretty hard on his right hand, wrist area, and then he kind of takes a shot from a defender a little bit late on the play. So it could have been a number of things, but I don't want to speculate too much beyond that.
Yeah, I get that. And Mike Elko is certainly not one to reveal a whole lot, especially when it comes to injuries. But how have you seen Marcel Reed develop as a quarterback since he took over the job full time? Because I think when he first burst onto the scene, I mean, he ran all over LSU last year, but he wasn't very dynamic in the passing game. But through 2 games, he's been airing it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think for him, just the decisions and the anticipation's been a lot better. It just feels like he's so much more comfortable. He's not looking to run first anymore. He's not a one read and go kind of quarterback anymore. He reads through his progressions a little bit more comfortable and confident in the pocket, and not afraid to fire it into a tight window. We've seen a number of times. Even if it's a short and intermediate range, he will fire it through that tight window. I think the question for him continues to be kind of that deep ball and outside the hashes deep ball kind of stuff that he still has to show that consistently he can be accurate on those kind of throws. He's been about 60% completion throughout his time at A&M. And this year included. He said in the spring his goal was to be up to 70 this year, which I felt like was a pretty big expectation for him to put on himself. But I think for him to get there, he's got to show better accuracy on those longer throws. But at the same time, he doesn't have to be that superhero, like I said, where, hey, a lot of times he's just giving it to guys in space. He's thrown a lot of short and intermediate stuff and kind of letting those guys do their thing. So not a lot of crazy throws that he has to make, but when he does, he can make them when it's short and intermediate.
How have you seen the offense evolve in year 2 under Colin Klein as offensive coordinator? I know it's not the biggest sample size, but it does seem like there have been some noticeable differences in philosophy and play calling.
Yeah, I think it starts with the passing game where, again, I just think last year you had a bunch of tall, slow guys, for lack of a better term. You had 6'6" Noah Thomas, 6'4" Jade Walker, big guys that could get you a lot of balls, 50-50, that you kind of throw it up to down the field, but not guys that really created a lot of separation. Well, now you look at their receivers, it's not just Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion, it's Terry Bussey and Ashton Bethel-Roman. You'll see them wide the heck open with nobody around them, and that's just something you never saw last year. And when you do that, it makes you a lot more balanced because it got to a point where, with how strong this running game was and with how lackluster the passing game was, everyone could just stack the box and couldn't really do anything about it. You watch the Texas game from last year, and they didn't have Le'Veon Moss that game. they wanted to establish the run, but Texas just was not allowing it and was saying, hey, beat us with your receivers. And A&M just could not do it. This year, you can't do that. You try to stack the box, which is basically what UTSA did. Well, they're just going to throw it to Mario Craver on a screen, and he's going to break a tackle and run 20 yards for a gain. So it adds more balance. And then if you want to, focus on the receivers, well, then you can run the ball with Le'Veon Moss, a second-team All-SEC guy who, has got an NFL future ahead of him. So just a lot more balanced, I would say. The one thing we haven't probably seen quite yet is Marcel Reed with his legs. He's obviously run the ball quite a bit these first couple games, but not really a lot of design stuff, not really a lot of intentional scrambling and stuff. It just kind of taking what the defense gives them when it comes. And so I'll be curious against Notre Dame. We've seen 8-10 carries from him these first couple games. Could we see more of like a 15 carry scenario where they're a little bit more intentional about, running the football with the quarterback and getting him going in the zone read game? So that'll be the question I have going forward.
Carter is going to be right back here with us in a moment to break down Texas A&M's run game before we dive into the Aggie defense. But before we get to that, a word from Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead time keeps you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there is just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So if you're still looking for tickets for the Notre Dame home opener this Saturday against Texas A&M, make sure you check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Yeah, it's funny that you say he hasn't been a huge part of the run game because he is actually the team's leading rusher. But like you said, a lot of that is scrambling, just making plays with his legs. But they also have two good running backs in Ruben Owens and Le'Veon Moss. What have you seen from the run game so far, and do you expect some significant change going up against Notre Dame? Because I do feel like when you have a game like this in week 3 of the season, you're probably not going to reveal a whole lot in weeks 1 and 2.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think they have put those two guys really in bubble wrap the first couple weeks because you look at Le'Veon Moss, he tore his ACL and his MCL in his right knee last November 2nd against South Carolina. And then you've got Ruben Owens, who had a Liz Frank fracture in his foot last August, only came back for the last couple games and really wasn't 100%, really probably didn't feel like himself until the following spring. And so they were really careful with those guys. They had one scrimmage in preseason camp. Neither of them participated. Neither of them really got taken to the ground and tackled during camp. And so game 1 against UTSA, that was really the first time they got brought to the ground. And so they were very intentional about let's kind of ease them in, almost like a preseason where, Le'Veon Moss had 3 carries. Ruben Owens had 5 carries. Very limited touches there. Then they go into last week. They kind of ramp it up a little bit. Le'Veon Moss gets 10 carries, but still not a big workload. So, yes, Marcel Reed led them in rushing, but it's also because they just haven't given the ball to the running backs all that much. And I felt like the running game started to click more last week. They had about 240 rushing yards, I want to say. And so they started to find more success than they did in the opener. And I just think that's been the plan all along. It's just, hey, you don't have to run for 400 yards in these games. You don't have to show everybody who Le'Veon Moss is. Everyone already knows that he's a good player. So just kind of keep him in bubble wrap, and then once it comes to Notre Dame time, okay, then maybe you'll see 15-ish carries out of him. Maybe you'll see more Owens. Maybe you'll see more Reed in his legs. There's no sense in really risking re-injury or you want to keep those guys as fresh as you can going into a game like this.
The fact that Moss is even playing this far removed from a very severe knee injury is pretty incredible, and I understand that people have different timelines, but that's pretty crazy. To tear ACL and MCL last November and to be out there playing football, I think is pretty insane as it is. But at receiver, we've already talked about a couple of the names so far. Texas A&M was very aggressive in the transfer portal. They get Casey Concepcion from NC State, Mario Craver from Mississippi State. And so far, these guys have lived up to the hype. I mean, Craver has 13 receptions for 236 yards and 3 touchdowns through 2 games. Concepcion also brought a punt back to the house. But meanwhile, on the Notre Dame defense, their secondary has been the strength of this team for years now, and they have some future NFL guys in like Leonard Moore and Don Schuler. How do you see that matchup playing out?
Yeah, I think that in watching the Miami Notre Dame game, certainly Notre Dame's secondary is still a huge strength, but definitely seems a lot more attainable than maybe last year when you had Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison in that mix as well. And so I think with, if you were taking last year's receiver group at A&M, you would think, man, we got no chance against these guys. But now they have some real weapons where, I know Notre Dame likes to play a lot of man, so KC and Mario, they're 2 guys that can create a lot of separation. So I do think that they can, get theirs. Now maybe it's not going to be 100 yards again for Mario Craver, but I think moving the ball and having occasional explosive plays can happen. And I just think it's an offense that wants to be balanced. So if Notre Dame wants to crowd the box, they're going to be, content with giving it to their guys in space. But if they're going to be more focused on Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion, okay, then they're just going to run the ball. And it's just not what they had last year. And this year they have that luxury to where they can just basically do whatever the defense dictates them to do.
Let's switch over to the defense. Mike Elko obviously has the reputation as a defensive guru, was defensive coordinator for one season at Notre Dame back in 2017 and completely revamped that side of the ball after an abysmal showing back in 2016. I would say last year's group at Texas A&M was good, not great. And you've already mentioned the fact that they've struggled at times during the first 2 games. So what has stood out to you about Texas A&M's defense so far?
Yeah, I think the run defense was a concern, which when you think of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and those guys, it's a real concern going into this game. And they improved in that area last week, but still have a lot to prove. They lost their top 3 defensive linemen after last season, Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, and Shamar Turner. And, they replaced them with some guys in the portal, but, you're kind of lacking in defensive tackle depth. You don't really have the star power that you had last year up front. And you got a lot of guys that have things to prove. And so, they go in the opener, and Robert Henry at UTSA, who I think actually will be a pretty good back this season.
Yeah,
he had a great game against Texas State last Saturday. But still, you think UTSA, you should be able to win the line of scrimmage and do well there. But that guy had 177 yards against A&M. They had over 200 yards rushing, and that just can't happen. And what is a product of is A&M play in, play out usually does pretty well against the run. It's just like 6 plays a game where they get destroyed. There'll be 6 runs for 150 yards, and then the other 30 runs will be for 40 yards. But those 6 runs will be the difference for them. And I think part of it is the lack of depth at defensive tackle. The other part of it is, if you can get some of these guys in space at the second level, is a favorable matchup. A&M has not shown that they can be a good tackling team yet. They missed 13 tackles in the opener. They missed a ton of tackles last season, and they brought back their entire back seven, which is full of guys that were definitely part of those missed tackles. And so run defense-wise, a concern. I think coverage-wise, if you had to ask Mike Elko what was the biggest issue with this defense last season, he would tell you it was their coverage. And I think they've done a better job there. I think they'll be better there. Do I think they'll be great? No, I still think they have a lot to prove. But like I said, they brought back their whole back seven. Having that continuity, having that experience back there, having a guy like Will Lee, who was second-team All-SEC, they should be better this year, and they look to be better. Des Ricks, a guy who really struggled last year, he's been great so far. Put together a really good preseason camp. Barely been targeted through the first couple games. I think he could, be one of the more improved players on the team. But this will be the first real challenge for that group, and I still think they've got a lot to prove. So it's a defense that has a lot of different holes, I think. I'm not saying they're the worst defense in the SEC, but definitely a lot more optimistic about this offense than I am the defense.
You make a great point about the missed tackles. That was an issue last year. I mean, when Jadarian Price ran for a touchdown, Torian York, who's like the leader of the defense, had him dead to rights, misses the tackle, Price scores, and then when Jeremiah Love ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown too, he didn't necessarily break a bunch of tackles, but throughout the game, they had forced a lot. What has Mike Elko said about that? Because it's really hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that a Mike Elko defense just simply can't tackle.
Yeah, I do think that, there's a question of whether is this fixable, is it not fixable? And when I've asked him about it in the past, he always says it's fixable, and then it doesn't really get fixed all the time. I think, again, it can be 80% of the time you're doing all the right things, but those 20% of those running plays where they miss 3 tackles, I was just thinking about that Jadarian Price touchdown because Torian York, a very solid linebacker, great instincts, high IQ, great leader, great tackler. But when you get him in space, he has some limitations athletically that can lead to situations like that where you can just juke him out kind of thing. We saw that in the opener. Robert Henry, first play of the second half, when he goes for a 75-yard touchdown, he jukes out Torian York at the line of scrimmage. He jukes out Bryce Anderson, the safety on the second level, and then runs for a 75-yard touchdown. That's just kind of what this defense has been dating back to last November when they played at South Carolina. And so when you're talking about a lot of the same guys, right, bringing back the whole back seven, bringing back Cassius Howe, Albert Regis, DJ Hicks, some of those guys up front, sometimes you just kind of are who you are. And I think there's ways this defense can be better. Like I mentioned, the coverage. But the tackling, it's hard to fix that. It's hard to – when you're in space with Jeremiah Love, if you don't got the athletic traits of Jeremiah Love, it's going to be hard to wrap up and tackle that guy. So, it's part of me thinks that it's so important for this front to get him on that first level because as soon as he and Price get in that second level, that's where the issues start to occur for this defense.
And one of the best players on that front is edge rusher Cassius Howe. He had 3 sacks in the last game, back to back to back. I've only seen that one time. I think Riley Mills did it last year for Notre Dame against Florida State, but he was already considered to be the next great Texas A&M defensive lineman. Obviously, having 3 sacks in a row is extremely impressive, but based on what you've seen from him so far, does he have the ceiling of Nick Scorton, Shamar Turner, or Shamar Stewart?
I think so, but I'd say he's a much different player than those guys. I loved what I saw from him last season. He came in from Bowling Green and tied for the lead in sacks in the MAC conference. So we knew he was already a good player, but because he played behind those guys, he was not a starter. And even then, as a backup, he was almost just as productive as those guys. He had just about as many pressures. He had 3 or 4 sacks, which was about how many Nick Scorton had, more than Shamar Stewart had. And when he came into the game, you really felt a difference in the pass rush. And I think Nick Scorton, and why I say he's so much different than Scorton and Stewart, is those were some bigger dudes. You're talking about like 280-pound, monstrous athletic freaks. Cassius Howell's not quite like that. He's more of your pure pass rush specialist. Because of that, maybe you question his run-stopping abilities more. You can have some success running at him. But from a pass rush perspective, if you get in 3rd and long, you got to really account for this guy because he's just a menace off the edge. And I kind of looked at him in the offseason and thought, if there's one guy that can break out and be a superstar on this defense, it would be Howell. He's the guy that's got that 10-sack ceiling where, hey, he could be that first, second team All-SEC guy for this group. He just got to put it together. And, question still remains, like, can he be that complete player? Like, last year he had some issues with penalties. Sometimes you can run on him. Even in the opener, ran around him for a touchdown, right? So there are some concerns with this game, but pass rush wise, like, yeah. And, you look at this Notre Dame O-line and, maybe it's just Ruben Bain being freaking incredible, but they struggled against that guy. Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner both, struggled against Bain. So I think if there's one advantage this defense could have, maybe it is Cassius Howell going against those guys and getting 1 or 2 sacks in a game like this.
How much does last year's game against Notre Dame, when the Irish were able to rally in the 4th quarter in College Station to pull out the win, still linger for Texas A&M? Now, we're recording this on a Sunday, so I'm sure that you'll hear more from the team leading up to the game on Saturday. But, has that been a talking point inside the program during the offseason leading up to Saturday?
I don't think as much because so much happened after that point. They really were motivated after that game right away, winning 7 straight. I think they're more caught up in the Auburn loss, a game that they really should have won on the road, the Texas loss. You lose to your rival, and, that's no fun on your home field. You lose to USC after being up 24-7 in the 3rd quarter. Those are the losses that I think have really hit A&M. Losing to a team that ended up going to the national championship game, I don't know if A&M's quite lost the sleep over that. But what I will say is it was the first game under Mike Elko. It was a chance for them to really set the tone for what this era could look like. And they felt like they were right there. It was 13-13 with 4 or 5 minutes left. And then it kind of got out of hand. Like you said, the Jadarian Price run was a big one. So this is another opportunity for them. The last season, the second half did not end the way that they wanted to. Well, now they win this game, and you're feeling really good about their chances. They're 3-0. You're starting to think, man, a playoff run could actually, be in store for this team. They 3-0, and really with the way the schedule sets up, they could start 7-0 if they win this game. So I think it's more about the opportunity, especially compared to maybe missing that opportunity last season to kind of set the tone for the era.
And on paper, A&M looks like one of the most talented teams Notre Dame will face all season long. Where do you think the Aggies have the biggest edge over the Irish going into this one?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's one thing that really stands out. What I will say, and this might be a surprising answer, I think A&M special teams could, if A&M wins this game, that could be the difference maker. And it's kind of a funny answer because you don't think of special teams, but it's been the one huge difference outside of the passing game that we've seen. Casey Concepcion, first punt that he returned as an Aggie, ran it back for a touchdown. And it just seems like every punt, every kickoff, A&M is taking it back like pretty far and having a chance to run it back. And we talked to Mike Elko about it. He said it's been a huge emphasis of this offseason is the punt return game and wanting to be one of the top in the country in that category. And I really think just watching this team the first couple games, it really could be one of the better special teams units in the country. And when you're talking about a toss-up game, I think Notre Dame's a 3.5-point favorite at this point.
I think it's 7. It's higher than I expected, to be honest.
Okay, I thought it was 7, and then I went on a podcast and they said 3.5, so I just believed them. I'm
seeing 6.5 right now.
Okay, gotcha. So anyway, maybe it's not quite toss-up-y, but if you're going to believe that it's a coin flip, then maybe a special teams return, maybe a kickoff return touchdown could be the difference in a game like this. Outside of that, the real answer I give you, I just think, again, this passing game, the difference between this passing game now versus the one Notre Dame saw last season is just way different. Because not only are the receivers way improved, but Connor Wigman had like the worst game we've ever seen from
really
a quarterback in that game. And all credit to the Notre Dame defense. They were excellent in that game. But for sure, I think it's going to look a lot different this time than last time.
What do you think is the biggest concern or weakness for A&M heading into South Bend?
Got to be the defense. It's not just that A&M has shown weaknesses there, but Jeremiah Love, really good player. Jadarian Price, really good player. And one thing that I found interesting in the opener for Notre Dame, for whatever reason, they don't like to give the ball to Jeremiah Love.
Have you been on Notre Dame message boards lately?
I'm not. I'm sure everyone's talking about it.
It has been discussed, yeah.
And so my thought is that, I forgot what the name of it's called, but they always talk about how the diva receiver, whenever he doesn't get the ball one game, the next game, if he complains enough, he's going to get force-fed the ball a million times. I kind of wonder if Notre Dame's going to do that with Love, where not to say he's a diva, but just, hey, didn't give me the ball last time, give me the ball this time, especially against maybe a favorable look defensively. Maybe he gets a bunch of carries, and I don't think that'd be great for A&M. And, I think, it's been a focus. I think maybe you could say it's good that some of these concerns happened early so they can really focus on them coming up for this game. They know what they're going into. But, man, they've got a lot to prove in that area, and I just think, even good defenses can have their hands full with Jeremiah Love. So I think that's definitely the choice.
Yeah, I don't think Love is a diva or has to be a diva in this scenario. I think Notre Dame is going to force feed him the ball early and often. Same with Jadarian Price as well, although he did get benched in the last game because he had a fumble near the goal line. But I do expect him to be a big part of the game plan this week. But the last question I have for you is just how do you see this game playing out?
Man, it's such a hard game to predict, but I think Notre Dame narrowly wins. I'm going to give the edge to them being the home team, and I think Jeremiah Love's just the best player in this game. I just think he's poised to have a big game against this defense, a big enough game to at least win. And I think C.J. Carr showed some promise. I think A&M probably feels a lot better playing him his second start of his career than maybe his 10th or 12th. But I feel like he is good enough to win a game like this from what he showed. I think going into the season, I picked Notre Dame, and I felt worse about them after the Miami game just because I felt like they were a lot more human up front and defensively. But I still give them the edge just because they're the hometown team, and Jeremiah Love will be the best player in the game. Yeah,
so in the offseason, I actually predicted Notre Dame to lose this game, but I said that they would split the first two between Miami and Texas A&M. But now that they've dropped that Miami game, their backs are against the wall. They absolutely have to get this win. It would be a signature win for this team in this season. So I expect the Irish to win, but I am expecting an absolute dogfight in South Bend on Saturday. So it should be a lot of fun. Carter, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I know you have been getting a lot of requests this week, and we'll probably continue to get them up until Saturday. So I'm very grateful for your time. Enjoy the game on Saturday. Take care.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
All right, that is going to do it for today's show. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. We have a lot of great stuff coming your way every single day this week as we get closer to kickoff against Texas A&M. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you might be listening to the podcast, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It really helps us out. Also wanted to remind you to submit your mailbag questions if you want to be featured on Friday's show. And be sure to check out Locked On's very own college football kickoff show this Thursday, only available on Fire TV. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.